Jordan Midler over at VGC. Demon Souls was developed by FromSoftware in collaboration with Sony Japan Studio. During the game's development, it was planned that the game would be published globally by Sony, but that didn't come to be. Although, these days, Demon Souls is considered the first entry in the FromSoftware's popular Souls-like series of games, it's said that at the time, Sony couldn't see the game's global appeal. Due to the game's high difficulty and negative early tests, Sony decided not to localize Demon Souls for an English language release. Instead, in the US, the game was published by Atlas, and in Europe, publishing was handled by Banda Namco. Speaking with the Sacred Symbols podcast, former SIE president Shuehei Yoshida explained that Sony wanted to work on the sequel to Demon Souls with FromSoftware, but the developer turned it down and instead decided to work with Bandai Namco on what would become Dark Souls. Quote, FromSoftware was already working on the sequel, but they were so disappointed with how PlayStation treated them, we wanted to work with them again, but they passed on it, end quote, Yoshida claimed. Quote, Sony would eventually work with FromSoftware again some years later with the PS4 exclusive Bloodborne, something Yoshida said he was happy to see. Quote, we have huge respect for Miyazaki and we were able to work with them again, end quote, he said. Quote, Bloodborne is one of his best games, end quote. In an interview with Game Informer back in 2012, Yoshida gave more detail on Sony's decision to not localize Demon Souls for the West, admitting that he didn't get the appeal at first. Quote, for my personal experience with Demon Souls, when it was close to final, I spent close to 2 hours playing it, and after 2 hours, I was still standing at the beginning of the game, end quote. He recalled at the time, quote, I said, this is crap. This is an unbelievably bad game. So I put it aside. Luckily, third-party publishers, Atlas in North America and Namco in Europe, stepped in, and it really became a great hit outside of Japan. We definitely dropped the ball from a publishing standpoint, including studio management side. We were not able to see the value of the product we were making, end quote. Michael, today's episode is full of Yoshida quotes. It is going to be a busy show for Yoshida because now that he's no longer with PlayStation, dude's got a couple things to say. Where do you stand with this?
Well, I mean, look, I appreciate the honesty. I do think, longtime Souls fans kind of maybe mad he's poking the bear, right? Saying Bloodborne's one of their best games because Bloodborne's the one we still haven't gotten a sequel on that I know people want the most. So I do think that was a little funny. But I'm going to be honest here, Drew. I'll take Sony's side. I don't think Sony was wrong, right? If you look at the very first Demon Souls game, I remember people playing it and they're like, this is hard. Like, this is really hard. I can understand you're getting ready to publish this game and you're like, I don't know if this is going to hit everywhere. Especially in the, I mean, very obvious if you're in the game community, East and West have very different gaming styles, very different likes and dislikes. So I can see them saying, like, I don't know if this is going to hit in the West. Like, a very hard game where you're basically, like, dying is almost like something everyone's going to do. So I understand where Sony's coming from, Drew. I don't think they can really blame themselves. This is just hindsight. If you're a sports fan, this is like people saying, well, like, oh man, we should have picked Tom Brady. Like, yeah, we know you should have picked Tom Brady, but at the time, nobody knew he was going to be good. Nobody knew Demon Souls was going to be this iconic franchise spanning several decades because it was just different than anything that was out there. I don't blame Sony. This is, I think, Yoshida trying to say, like, hey, yeah, at least we messed up. At least he isn't trying to say, like, oh, we should have done this. He knows they messed up, but I don't blame him because this game was like nothing I ever played. I did the same thing as him. I'll be honest. First Dark Souls game, I played for like 4 hours, and I was like, this sucks. And now I'm like, dang, I wish I would have played Elden Ring. So everybody came around eventually.
Yeah, it all just took a little bit of time to catch on to what they were building, right? FromSoftware probably didn't even realize what they had at the time. I think that's kind of going back. When you get into the first one, you never think, looking forward, this is going to turn into a whole genre within itself. And that's what they did. FromSoftware came in, they created a whole Souls-like genre, more or less. And this is where everything comes from now, it feels like, right? A lot of people now go back to FromSoftware and where they started and how do we kind of mimic them, but in our own vein, our own style. It is interesting to see that, yeah, they kind of screwed up, right? But again, it's two different areas of the world, and sometimes it works over there and other times it doesn't over here, and things along that line. Welcome to the gaming industry. dude, every time you produce a game, you're taking a bet that this is going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
You're never guaranteed, right? Like a Concord, they put a big bet in there, and that one failed. This is no different, except this one succeeded. And that's where things changed, right? So all of a sudden now you get into Dark Souls, you get into Elden Ring. We're getting into Night Rain now. Dude, I'm not a Souls guy. Cannot wait for Night Rain. Cannot wait now to get into this. Yeah, it is challenging. It is like, why do I want to bash my head into a wall? One of the reasons why I always say I'm not a Souls fan, right? I don't have hours to bash my head into a wall where I'm just going to keep going back and do it again. Night Rain's different because I'm in there with friends. And that's like this co-op aspect. Yes, you can do that with Elden Ring 2 and certain other Souls games. But at the very beginning of all of this, I don't think anybody from FromSoftware, Sony, gamers alike had any idea that this is how it was all going to turn out.